Provocative story here. Esquire magazine catching some heat tonight. This piece profiling a 17-year-old white boy from Wisconsin. And the title is What It's Like to Grow Up White, Middle Class, and Male in the Era of Social Media, School Shootings, Toxic Masculinity, Me Too, and a Divided Country. Some critics were quick on Twitter and social media to label this disgusting and tone-deaf, inappropriate, and irrelevant. Joining me now, Darren Porcher, U.S. Army veteran and former NYPD officer, Rumondo Kelly, actor, activist, and the face of Just for Men, Brandon Straka, founder of the Walk Away campaign, which encourages liberals to walk away from the Democratic Party. Gentlemen, thank you. Let's dive right in. Darren, let me start with you. What's wrong with this story?
I think this is a very uniquely provocative story set forth by Esquire magazine. Their ratings are falling, and as a result of it, they know the thing that everyone understands is race is the elephant in the room. It's necessary for us to have a discourse on race relations. However, it needs to be needs to be done calmly and wisely. And that's what they have us doing. We're talking about it here now. They're getting free press as a result of this article.
Well, they always try to be provocative, and they always try to write stories that kind of dig into, something that's going on in America. Ramondo, I guess one of my questions is, these are issues for young white men growing up to deal with the issue of toxic masculinity, which we've talked about in the era of Me Too. This is a boy who goes to work at a job before school at 6:30 in the morning. His parents are divorced. They don't live together. He's not a wealthy child. He is a white boy growing up in America. So why, do you think that story is not a story that can be talked about?
Martha, after reading the story, I came away knowing nothing that I didn't already know, okay? All I kept thinking about is Esquire really dropped the ball on this one. They had an opportunity to let the world know that there's more important people in the world than white middle class, but they didn't.
But how are they saying that he's the most important person in the world, or that people like him are?
Well, Wisconsin. Speaking of Wisconsin, where he's from, they really made a point by saying, hey, this is a red state. But they could have did more. That's more of the same. That's speaking more to the same propaganda that the Trump administration continues to push.
But I didn't see, Brandon, them. They're not elevating this boy. In my mind, when I read it, they're talking about what he's going through. He went in, he had a really awful incident, awful for everyone concerned, where a girl hit him, and his reflex was that he hit her back, and he got in big trouble. And as a 17-year-old high school kid, that was one of the biggest, most horrible experiences that he was going through at that moment in his life. What do you think about all of it?
Well, I mean, young white men are a segment of society that exists, and they have a unique experience, just like we all have a unique experience. It doesn't matter, despite the color of your skin or your sexual orientation, we all have a unique experience. And so I don't know why we've gotten to a point now where we've decided that the experiences of heterosexual white men are unimportant and shouldn't be heard. It's interesting because the liberal left are the first to tell you Black Lives Matter, something that I agree with. But when conservatives say in return, well, all lives matter, liberals will tell you, oh, no, but Black Lives Matter. It's very important that we hear about the Black experience. So why can't we occasionally talk about the white experience, which is a unique experience just as well?
Darren, what do you say to that?
Well, I can only speak from a position of conjecture in connection with what it's like being a white male. That's something I can't understand. You would have a better understanding of that than me. But the truth of the matter is, I understand that we do need to lend some credence to what a Caucasian man deals with. But it goes back to, if we're going to have this discourse, it needs to be calmly and effectively get the points across, where we can both both sides can come up with the understanding.
That says that he's more important than a young black man. It's a story about, they talk about the fact that the suicide rate has risen 44% among adolescents in America. So they're talking about the reality of growing up as a teenage boy in a social media world. Now, some of those things cross over all colors in America. They just happen to be profiling this person and telling about his experience. So I'm not sure. I guess what I don't understand is why that telling this person's story is offensive to other races.
Well, Martha,
it goes back to...
Well, Martha, but you have to understand there's so many other topics that could be discussed. I think it really caught a lot of Americans off guard. Like, why is this so important?
So he's unimportant.
There are
His story.
other stories that are more important.
See,
That's
I don't,
Well, it's
I'm sorry, I don't
necessary
really
to have
buy
the
that.
conversation.
Right now, the suicide rate is highest among white men. It's at 78%.
Which is a story.
That's a
agree,
huge story. There's
do
a
you gentlemen
crisis
agree
happening
that
in
that's a
America.
story?
I agree, but you have to take
That's
into
a story.
consideration
That's a
you have
crisis.
more
That's a story.
Caucasian men in this country.
No,
than
they're
you
talking
have-
about the percentage.
Right.
of-
But when you look at the number of Caucasians that do commit suicide, absolutely it is an issue. But it goes back to what we're addressing here with this article. I think that he has a right to his day, and his parents have the right to their day to discuss this, because this is a young
It's a
man
story.
that's in
He's
crisis.
a Midwestern kid, and they wrote a story about him.
And he's in crisis.
There's going to be lots of stories that are written about other young people and their experiences as they grow up in America. I want to play this soundbite from Howard Schultz because this also got a lot of backlash, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's watch.
As somebody who grew up in a very diverse background as a young boy in the projects, I didn't see color as a young boy, and I honestly don't see color now.
Ramondo is shaking your head. Why?
Because it's so dismissive. It's more of the same. It's a plain out cop out. Why? That's the last thing we need in America right now is someone to say, I don't see color.
Don't we all
we
wanna
need
be
to see
equal?
color. We need to see color. We need to understand that
But
color.
Martin Luther King said that he didn't want to judge people by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He also said that he wanted to see a future where there wasn't discussions about white power and black power, but about human power. So isn't the goal that we want to get to a place where we all see each other as humans?
Well, may I say,
It makes
Go
a
ahead,
lot of
Darren.
sense what you're saying, but the truth of the matter is he put his foot in his mouth. He's running for office, and we all have an implicit bias.
He's saying when I
Whether
grew
it's-
up, I had friends who were black and friends who were white, and I didn't see people as...
And what he's trying to do is whitewash what happened in Starbucks when the two African-American men were arrested. He's trying to get past it for the presidential campaign. The truth of the matter is, as I mentioned earlier, we all have an implicit bias. It's necessary for you to see
But we
color
have to work
when you
to get
deal
away
with
from
people.
that,
But when
correct?
you do see color...
Let me hear from these guys before we
The
have to
double
go.
standard, I think, is astounding. I mean, aren't we sitting here tonight having this discussion because people saw a white boy on a cover of a magazine? They saw color and they freaked out. They said, why do we need to have a story about a white boy? They saw this story, this white person on the cover of a magazine, and they lost their minds, people on the left. So it's absolutely true. I mean, I happen to agree with the notion that I think it's ridiculous for people to say they don't see color. Of course we all see color. I see what color you are. I see what color you are. I see what color you are. But that doesn't mean that we have to, that is instrumental in us judging what the experience is of somebody else.
Rwanda.
Brandon, but again, to have an opportunity to not only say, hey, I do see color, and to acknowledge that racism exists, racism is here. But for whatever reason, you have that opportunity, and again, you're trying to run for president,
But why can why can we only discuss one side of racism? I think that's what bothers so many people. This white boy was on the cover of a magazine, and people on the left are losing their minds, and that's because of racism.
Because there's so
on
many
the
other
left.
topics.
Last thought,
to
guys. I got to
discuss.
leave it there. All right. Thank you very much. Very good conversation. I thank all of you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Good to have you. So Wednesdays with Waters is coming up next.